Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cedric Mitchell. I'm Deputy Director for Community Engagement for California State Parks. It's my honor to welcome you all here to the Outdoor Equity Program's second round technical assistance workshops. This is one of a number of workshops that we've had both virtually and in person around the state. And we're excited to share with you about our program and about your opportunity to participate. But before we begin, I'm going to ask that the team introduce themselves and then we'll get started. Go ahead, Victor.
Thank you, Cedric. Hi, everyone. I'm Victor Patino, Program Manager, and I hope you enjoy the webinar today. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine. I'm a project officer here at OGAL. So thank you so much for attending today's workshop.
How's it going? My name is Kyle. I'm also one of the competitive view project officers, and I'll be answering questions today. So thanks for joining us.
Hello, my name is Julianne Coronado. I'm also a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Esmeralda Bermudez, and I'm also a project officer here at the Office of Grants and Local Services. I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you all our other project officer, Nikki Lambert, who's actually working behind the scenes and doing our screen shares for today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This is the team that will be presenting today. So I'd like to just share with you a little bit about our program. We're very excited that we had over 125 grants given out in the last round, and we're very excited to see not what those organizations are doing, but the next generation of applicants that we're going to be awarding. We're excited to talk about the Outdoor Equity Program. We'll call it the OEP for short. This workshop will provide guidance for round 2 of OEP, of which applications are due December 14th, 2023. Round 1 funded $57 million for 125 programs throughout California. This round will provide $50 million to continue the legacy of the program. OEP's intent is to increase the ability of residents in underserved communities to participate in outdoor experiences within their community and at state parks and other public lands. OEP is a unique funding opportunity that provides funding for transportation, logistics, program operations, and capacity costs associated with reaching historically underserved urban and rural communities throughout California. As we begin our workshop, I want you to be aware of a few key approaches in this program. OEP funds are for program operations only. Construction projects are not eligible. Programs that combine both multiple activities within an underserved community, multiple trips that provides access to natural area destinations, and programs that will span over multiple years will be most competitive. You will learn about the community home base. This approach for the community home base approach for the purposes of this program. The community home base will be the central gathering place within an underserved community where the majority of targeted participants of the program live. The presenters will describe this in more detail for you today. Before I turn it over to the team, I want to discuss the funding availability for round 2 applications. $700,000 is the grant amount cap per application. However, more than $700,000 may be awarded to one agency or organization. You can submit a separate application for each additional community home base that you and your partners are capable of serving. For example, let's say you plan to serve 3 rural towns. 3 applications are submitted for 3 towns at $300,000 per application. If all 3 grants are awarded, that would be a total of $900,000. That may be possible. If one of the 3 grants is awarded, both the state and your organization will be clear on what community will be served through that awarded application. Please keep these points in mind today. The presenters today will get into more detail as we go through the application guide to further explain what I have said. At this time, I'd like to bring Christine on board and we'll get started. Christine?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Cedric. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Today's workshop is going to be, or is, I should say, is being recorded right now and will be posted on the OEP webpage shortly. So before we start here, a few of the webinar's features to be aware of. We do have closed captioning, and if you look on the screen, you'll see the circling there of that More button with the 3 dots. So you're going to click that. And then you're going to go down to Language and Speech and click that. And then you'll click where it says Turn on Live Captions. So that's how you're going to turn on closed captions. Another feature is the chat feature. And again, Nikki's circling there, the chat feature. And so you're going to click that to use to ask any questions, and you can type in your questions in that chat feature. For those of you that do not see the chat feature, past participants have been able to access it by exiting the workshop and then re-entering the workshop, and that usually fixes that glitch. So again, the chat feature is where you're going to be adding your questions. We will be answering those questions directly in the chat. We will also be addressing some of your questions out loud. You'll notice in the chat feature that there are going to be icons such as thumbs up or a heart next to your question. And that's basically our way of communicating with each other internally behind the scenes as to who will be responding to your question. So with that, I'd like to take us to review the agenda. Great, perfect. So here's our agenda here for the workshop. We're going to be going over the timeline and the competitive chart. And then we're going to be jumping into the application guide, which is going to be going through the actual packet, all of the application checklist items, all of the eligible costs. And then we're going to have a closure by Cedric. And so again, if you have any technical issues or questions regarding the webinar, to please email that email address there, that ogals@parks.ca.gov. And then after the webinar, please contact your competitive review project officer with any additional questions that you may have. So with that, we're going to move to the timeline. So here is the OEP round 2 timeline. And so summer of 2023, we did announce round 2. We are having our technical assistance workshops. This is one of them. We actually had a few back in August for a couple of the online webinars. We also had 8 in-person workshops that took place in September. And now we're having today and tomorrow, actually, of the other online workshops. So, important day here, December 14th is the application due date. So please write that down, circle that. That is an important date to remember. And summer of 2024 is when we're going to be making the grant announcements. And then, so you're going to be wanting to plan your outdoor program. Approximate program start date will be summer, fall of 2024. So on the bottom there, the multi-year performance period. So this program can operate for approximately 3 years from the date of grant award. We are asking grantees are not to start the program until after the funds are awarded, again, which is estimated to be sometime in the summer of 2024. The department is working on budget clarification for the end date and should know more in 2024. As soon as we find that out, we will be putting that information on our OEP webpage. And that will explain the updated grant performance period. So now we're going to switch over to our competitive chart. Perfect. And so this helps applicants. Provides an outline of the actual program and application guide. So this is really helpful to take a look at first before you dive into that application guide. So if the answer to any of the questions that are listed below is no, the proposed program, you'd have to take a look at those questions again. So Nikki is going through, and there's questions about the activities in the community, the natural area trips, etc. So this is a really important document to take a look at. And so both the timeline document that we just went over previously and this document, the competitive chart document, they're both located on the OEP webpage under resources. So I highly suggest you take a look at those documents and see if you could answer yes to all of those questions that are on that chart. So with that, we're going to switch over and start to go through the actual OEP application guide. Again, this is found on the OEP webpage. So as we go through this guide today, we're going to be going page by page, and we'll point out key information on each page we are on. And then we will ask for questions that you might have regarding that page or section. So let's go to page 5. And this is the table of contents. So you'll notice here there's 4 different sections. We have the program overview. We have the application package. So these are all the items that you're going to be turning in for your application. We have a section about eligible costs. And lastly, we have an appendices which has the technical assistance for applicants, including the grant selection criteria guidance. And so that is actually really important. The grant selection criteria guidance complements each project selection criteria. And so as we go through this guide, we'll be looking at each of the criteria and then flipping to the back of the guide to look at guidance for that. Last but not least, definitions for all words in those small caps are defined in the back of the guide, which is on pages 59 through 64. Okay, so we will go to the next page, which is page 6. This is the start of the program overview. I want to call your attention to that second sentence there where it has the key words and terms in small caps. So we are going to take a look at the first one, which is community home base. And so we are going to turn to page 60. Perfect. And on page 60, you'll see the definition of community home base, and it's a central gathering place for residents of underserved communities where the majority of targeted participants live. For example, a school, a recreation center, community meeting space, or local park may serve as the central gathering place in the underserved community. The next definition I would like to take you to is outdoor program. So you'll be hearing that a lot also throughout this workshop. An outdoor program is listed on page 62. I should say it starts on page 62. It's a pretty lengthy definition. So what is an outdoor program? So it is the experiences proposed through one application that promotes education, physical activities, leadership, and career pathways that strengthen participants' connection to the natural world. So this will include activities in the community and transporting residents to natural area trips from that community home base. This program does not involve actual construction projects of buildings or land infrastructure. So you'll notice there in the bullet points, we talk about part of that outdoor program will have self-discovery activities that empower participants to develop a sense of connection with nature, which may include unstructured time spent in the natural area trips. Also, activities that contribute to healthy lifestyle, sound nutritional habits, and improved outdoor educational and recreational experiences. Also, integrating instruction and science, technology, engineering, arts, etc., that connects to the nature experiences stewardship. And this definition continues on the next page on 63. You'll see that the outdoor program, we're also looking for those activities that foster stewardship of the environment using curriculum pursuant to those other 3 bullet points under there, which will coordinate instructional resources and strategies for providing active pupil participation with on-site conservation efforts, promoting service learning opportunities between schools and local communities, and assessing the impact to participating students of the Unified Education Strategy on pupil achievement and resource conservation. Also, curriculum that is aligned to the content standards for public schools adopted by the State Board of Education, and service learning and community outreach activities, again, relating to strengthening the connection to the natural world, and therapeutic recreation that uses nature to help people heal. So, again, the outdoor program is encompassing both activities in the community and natural area trips. So with that, I would like to take us to the definition of activities in the community, which is on page 59. Great. And so again, this is part of the component of your outdoor program. So an activity in the community, it's an outdoor or indoor education component within a 5-mile radius of the community home base, designed to achieve these 2 goals. 1, to prepare participants for the natural area trips, and 2, to learn about the community's environment. And you can see the 3 parts underneath there. We speak to environmental justice analysis and reporting. Again, discovering nature in action in the community through educational components, and curriculum-based activities at the community home base. So the second part of your outdoor program are those natural area trips. So we're going to flip back a couple pages to page 62. So what is the definition of natural area trip? It is a location outside the 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging to access by residents, such as beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, and state and national parks within California. So zoos, aquariums, natural history museums, and botanical gardens may also be eligible destinations if the primary purpose is for nature education. Okay, so now we're going to turn back to page 6. So really those 4 key terms, keep those in mind as we go through the rest of the application guide. So who is eligible for this grant program? So eligible applicants are all local, state, and federal public agencies. Examples include school districts and other public education agencies, cities and counties, joint power authorities, open space authorities, and regional open space districts. Also, nonprofits with 501c3 status and federal and state recognized tribes. Applicants can plan to operate the program for approximately 3 years from the date of grant award. Again, the OEP program cannot start until after the funds are awarded, which again is estimated to be summer of 2024. And once again, the department is currently working on budget clarification for the end date and should know more in 2024. And then the OEP webpage will be updated with that information at that time. So the amount available, again, we have 50 million available for this program. The grant amount per application, the maximum grant amount per community home base is $700,000. The minimum grant request per community home base is $20,000. There is no match requirement for this grant program. So 1 community home base equals 1 application. Again, this allows for reporting on the impacts of OEP within 1 community. If you're going to have multiple community home bases, that means you will be turning in multiple applications. Again, each community home base requires its own separate application. An applicant can submit as many applications as you would like to do, and an applicant may receive multiple grants to serve multiple communities. So on the next page, on page 7, it talks about what Cedric had mentioned earlier, that while $700,000 is the maximum grant amount, it is per application. So more than $700,000 may be awarded to 1 applicant. Again, an applicant can submit as many separate applications as possible. So an example would be, which we have there, if an applicant chooses to turn in 3 applications, and let's just say they come in at $300,000 for their grant ask for each application. If each of their 3 programs are chosen, they could be awarded the full $900,000, because again, that $700,000 maximum is per application per community home base. All right, so with that, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat feature. And now I'm going to hand it over to Julianne.
Thank you, Christine. All right, let's go ahead and turn to page 8 for the program overview of the community home base and grant selection criteria. This page explains to the applicant that each application will, 1, identify a central gathering place that will be the community home base in an underserved community that needs access to outdoor programs, like a community center, a school, a local park, etc. And 2, plan activities in the community home base and plan trips to natural areas outside of the community home base. For example, activities in the community could include preparing participants for a natural area trip or providing educational nature walks along a creek in the community. And trips to natural areas could include transporting the participants from the community home base to natural areas that are challenging to access, such as regional, state, or national parks, beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, or desert areas statewide. To summarize these steps, the applicant will, 1, establish a community home base in an underserved community where the majority of participants live, and 2, organize educational activities in the community and natural area trips from the community home base that serve participants who primarily live within the half-mile of the community home base. Let's turn to page 63 to look at the definition of participant. Participants are defined as residents who will join the outdoor program if the grant is awarded. The first word in the definition of participant is residents. Let's take a look at that definition, which is on the same page, 3 definitions down. Residents are defined as the population living primarily within a half-mile of the community home base. Let's go ahead and turn to page 9 for the program overview of the community home base diagram. This page shows the basic approach for this program. The first step is to identify the community home base in the community for a central gathering place like a recreation center or a school. The second step is to have activities within the community home base, like preparing families for a camping trip. And the third and final step is to organize trips from the community home base to natural areas. Let's go turn to page 10 for the application process. The application deadline is by 5 p.m. on December 14th, 2023. Applications will need to be submitted online in our submittable application platform. You can start your application today, or at least look at the application today if you would like. Please do not wait until 3 p.m. on December 14th to start entering your application, as there will be no extensions. The application process section outline identifies important steps to follow as you submit your application. At the bottom of this page is the grant administration process. Applicants who receive a grant must attend a mandatory grant administration workshop before receiving their contracts. This workshop will review the payment process and other administrative processes to ensure successful completion of the program. The grant administration process continues on to page 11. Let's take a look at number 5 there. We will also be offering successful applicants outdoor recreation leadership training from the Department's Office of Community Involvement. This is voluntary, but again, it is available to successful applicants. Up to 2 people who represent the grantee and will directly engage with the participants may attend the training for free. Graduates of the training will have access to FAM Camp supplies. FAM Camp includes free use of camping supplies for up to 30 participants, which consists of tents, sleeping bags, sleeping pads, lanterns, and cooking equipment, as well as free use of campsites in specific state parks. Grantees would only need to bring their own food and participants. Keep in mind that the OEP grant may cover the cost of transportation and food to FAM Camp. Please put any questions you have in the chat feature, and I will now go ahead and hand it over to Esme.
Thank you, Julianne. All right, so let's please go ahead and turn to page 12, please. All right, we're going to go over the application package here. The next pages will cover contains information and guidance on completing the application. Submit only the items requested on the checklist. Do not submit supplemental material such as letters of support. Applicants can find the forms used for this application in a fillable version on the OEP webpage. All right, so if we can please turn to page 13. Thank you. This is the application checklist. Applicants will use the checklist on this page, page 13, to organize your application, which provides the documents that will need to be uploaded into the online application portal submittable. This checklist identifies which items are required For example, the authorized representative signature. Let's please go ahead and turn to page 14. Thank you. And we're going to go over the project application form. This page provides instructions on how to fill out the application form. Let's go ahead and turn to page 15. Okay, thank you. And this, we're going to go over the project application. This is the application form on page 15. Here is the application form that provides the boxes to include the program name, the community home base name and location, the applicant contact information, and this form must be signed by the authorized representative. Next, we can turn to page 16, please. Great, thank you. This is the grant selection criteria. This page includes an overview of the grant selection criteria, checklist item number 2. This criteria will be used to rank all statewide applications. There actually are 8 criteria for this program that add up to the maximum points of 100 points. Notice the bullets. All applicants start with 0 points. No one loses points. Points are gained. To guide the applicants, each criteria has a scoring chart. Technical assistance is also available for each separate criteria in the back of the guide, and we will review each criteria and its corresponding technical assistance during our workshop. If you have any questions, please put those on the chat feature. I'm going to hand it over to Christine now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Esme. So now we're going to turn to the next page, which is page 17. And on this page, it starts the grant selection criteria. So this is the first criteria here, which is the community home base. And so this page is broken into 2 parts. We have part A and part B there. So for part A, the scoring points are based off the numbers provided by the community fact finder in the categories of income, poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learner levels around that community home base. Part B asks applicants to describe challenges affecting their residents. Also, it asks specifically why the community home base was selected and what is the need for its residents to have access to the outdoor program. So here's the part where applicants can include information outside of the information gathered from part A. So again, this part B area is really applicants' chance to tell the story of that particular community home base neighborhood. So a quick side note, if you are a round 1 OEP grant recipient and you are reapplying, this part B section is where you're going to be talking about how residents lack access to the outdoor program. You will need to talk about if you'll be serving a different population, such as last round focused on 4th graders, and maybe this round it will be focused on 8th graders, etc. Or how this round will have different activities or a more robust program that is different from round 1. Okay, so with this, you will see here on page 17, and then we'll continue kind of scrolling through to 18. You'll see that the scoring rubrics for these show that the rankings will be based on all statewide applications for the categories, again, of median household income, people in poverty, free or reduced price meals, and English learners. At the bottom of page 18, applicants can gain up to 5 points for describing those challenges beyond those described in Part A. Okay, so now I'd like to draw your attention to the Community Fact Finder. to find specific information within a half-mile radius of the community home base. And so at the top there, Nikki's circling the link that you're going to click on. So she's going to click on that link.
Hang on.
No
Technical
worries.
issue.
Perfect. So once you click on that link in the guide, it's going to bring you to this web page. So this is the Community Fact Finder web page. And what you're going to do is you're going to put an address or a city in that box. And so for right now, we're going to use the example of the state capitol in Sacramento. So the address of that, so Nikki's going to type in 1315 10th Street in Sacramento. And then you're going to hit that search button once you put in your own address. And it's going to pull up a circle there. And that circle has all of the data provided on the left-hand side. And so the numbers we will be asking for are located under the median household income, the people below poverty, free or reduced price meals, and the bottom there, English learners. So the last two categories, the free or reduced price meals and English learners, are pulled from the nearest public elementary, middle, and high school next to that community home base. If you feel like you don't know where to start or don't have a community home base in mind, the Community Fact Finder tool is a great place to start. If you look down in the legend on that far right-hand side, there are some overlays that can be added to the map. So Nikki's circling there, showing where you can find the layers. The first overlay is for parks, which shows up as green. And this overlay is automatically turned on. So you can see the little green rectangles and squares. Those are all parks in this particular neighborhood. The second overlay is for disadvantaged communities. So when you click that, like she just did, you'll see that purple is for disadvantaged communities and yellow is for severely disadvantaged communities. So Nikki, if you could please deselect the disadvantaged community, and then we'll go click on that one for schools. The third layer, this will show all public elementary, middle, and high schools, which will show up as those yellow blocks. If you have not located a community home base yet, keep in mind parks with the green overlay, schools with the yellow overlay can be used as a community home base if that's where residents gather. Now you can move that pin, that blue pin there, you can move that around within your community home base to find the best numbers for your community home base. If your report has the pin located outside of that community home base, we will drop the pin in the middle of your community home base and run a new report. Once you have that spot within your community home base, you're going to click the Get Report button, which Nikki is circling right there at the top of your screen. So once you click that, give it a few minutes here. Perfect. So this is what the Community Fact Finder report is going to look like. In the upper right-hand corner is your project ID number, which will be entered into your submittable online application. Again, you are going to be pulling the data from that median household income number and the people below poverty number the free or reduced price meal numbers, and the English learners for your response to that part A of that criteria 1. So you will only need to submit one community fact finder report for each proposed community home base. Remember, only one community home base equals one application. So for this criteria is I don't know if I'll take you back to my first to the beginning when I was talking that there was guidance provided for each criteria. So for the guidance for this, you'll find it on the bottom of page 18. It says technical assistance is available on page 49. So we are going to go there right now. So let's turn to page 49. And here is the selection guidance for criteria 1. So a couple things to mention, again, that the community home base should be strategically located within walking distance for the majority of residents and should meet the intent of this funding opportunity. Again, please review the definition for challenges. Again, that is in the back of the guide, and use it to tell your community's story for that part B section. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne, and she will take us on criteria 2.
Thank you, Christine. All right, let's turn to page 19 for grant selection criteria number 2 for community planning. Here, applicants will describe how the community's feedback was obtained through outreach and to provide ideas that the community had for outdoor programs, including activities at or near the community home base and activities at the natural area destination that will be implemented. In part A, you'll describe at least 2 meetings that were conducted in person at the community home base or within a half mile of the community home base. In part B, activities in the community, you'll describe topics presented at the meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for activities in the community. And in part C, for natural area trips, you'll describe topics presented at the meetings and all ideas from residents that will be included for the natural area trips. Now let's go to page 20. Here you'll see that in order to score the maximum points, an applicant will have at least 2 meetings in person at or near the community home base, involving at least 10 youth and 10 adults in total through combined meetings. Also, points will be given for listing the accepted ideas for activities in the community and natural area trips. Do not list trip ideas that will not be included in the outdoor program. The technical assistance can be found on page 50. This page includes ideas for in-person meetings, so they're listed under the outreach methods. Please put any questions you have in the chat feature, and I will now hand it over to Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Julianne. So now we're going to go into criteria 3. And this starts on page 21. So this is, again, so I'll be speaking about criteria 3 and criteria 4. And so both of these criteria are going to be the components for your outdoor program. So we'll be talking about the first component, which is that activities in the community. So here, it asks applicants to describe the proposed activities in the community within the 5-mile radius of the community home base. So this criteria is designed to capture what activities will take place within the community for the outdoor program. So again, just really quickly, you know, to hone in on the two, you know, radii, I should say, plural, that we want you to focus in on. So you have that half-mile radius, which is that community home base. That is, again, the target neighborhood. And then we want you to remember that 5-mile radius. So that is the 5-mile radius around your community home base. And so any activities within that 5-mile radius are going to be considered activities in the community. Anything outside of that 5-mile radius is going to be your natural area trips, which I'll be getting to in the next criteria. So again, activities in the community are activities within that 5-mile radius of the community home base. So what are we going to be asking applicants for? So for part A, for this criteria 3, for those activities in the community, we're going to be asking for the activities title and the location. So we're going to want to know, where are these activities taking place and the addresses for those activities. Numbers 4 through 7, applicants will describe whether the activity in the community is for learning about the community's environment or preparing for a natural area trip. The applicant is to provide a summary of the planned activities and also what educational goals will be met. In addition, we are asking to provide 1-sentence general description of the participants' age groups. For part B, we're going to be asking how many days in total will involve all of the activities in the community. And last but not least, there, for part C, of the total participants, how many youths will be served by all of the activities in the community? And to calculate those numbers, we provide an example right there under part C. All right, so scrolling further down this page, on page 21, you will see the scoring rubrics for points for part A. So you will be gaining 2 points if you have at least one activity in the community that will include learning about the community's environment. You'll also be gaining 2 points if at least one activity in the community will include preparing participants for those natural area trips. And lastly, at least one activity in the community will include multi-generational residents, including families and older adults. So on the next page, which is page 22, you'll notice there's a few scoring rubrics there. So with those, all of the applications are going to be ranked against each other with similar grant requests. And so you will see that term, as Nikki's highlighting there, for all of the scoring rubrics on this page. And so what are similar grant requests? Well, we need to take a look at that in the back of the guide, since that is a small capped definition. So let's turn to page 63. And there you'll see at the bottom, and it continues on page 64, but that similar grant requests, this is where we're going to be comparing applications only against other applications in the following groupings. So you'll see there, for instance, for group A, if an application's grant request is between $20,000 and $99,999, we're going to be comparing those applications to each other. And if you see on the next page, on page 64, the groupings go all the way up to that maximum grant request of $700,000. So this provides that if an applicant comes in and requests $20,000 for their program, they're not going to be compared against applications that are requesting $700,000. So if we go back to that page 22, And so for this again, they will be scored on the activities in the community compared to other statewide applications on excellent, average, and minimal. Also, we're going to be comparing the number of activity days and the number of youth participants, again, compared to statewide applications of similar grant requests. So at the bottom there, you'll see it says technical assistance is available on page 52. So we will turn to page 52. So on page 52, again, it needs to, activities in the community must involve outdoor or indoor education components within that 5-mile radius of the community home base and designed to achieve the 2 goals of 1, preparing participants for those natural area trips and learning about the community's environment. The majority of these activities should take place outdoors. However, indoor education classes or some indoor activities due to weather constraints are acceptable. Okay, also something to point out there at the bottom, the 5-mile radius is the straight line distance from the community home base and not driving routes. Applicants may use online tools that provide a straight line distance between the 2 locations. So if you have any questions about activities in the community, please put them in the chat feature. So now we're going to go to criteria 4, which is natural area trips, and this is on page 23. Perfect. So again, this is the second part of your outdoor program. So we just went over the other part, which is those activities in the community. So now we're looking at the second part of your outdoor program, which are the natural area trips. So this particular criteria asks applicants to describe the proposed natural area trips to locations outside of that 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging for residents to access. So for part A there, you'll notice numbers 1 and 2. We were asking applicants to describe the natural trip destination. We want to know the location and if the destination will be visited more than once. And this is called a reoccurring trip. Also for number 3, the category there will describe if the trip will be a day trip, overnight trips, or a number of night trips. There is no preference for these. For numbers 4 through 7, you'll see we want to please provide a summary about the planned activities that will be taking place at the natural area trip. We also want to know the self-discovery goals. And again, self-discovery is a defined term in the back of the guide. And it's that unstructured time and nature. So we want to know what those goals are going to be. In addition, for number 6 there, we want to know the educational goals. And finally, the age groups of who's going to be participating in these natural area trips. So for part B, we're going to be asking how many natural area trips will occur. This includes recurring trips to the same destination. And then for part C, we're going to want to know how many youths will be served by the natural area trips. And again, you'll find that calculation underneath there. And then scrolling further down the page here are points for A. And so you'll see there, the first box, you'll gain 2 points if at least one natural area trip will be to a destination of the state park system. The second box, you'll gain 2 points if the applicant provided a plan for the natural area trips to involve both those self-discovery goals and the educational experiences for participants. And finally, at least one nature area trip will include that multi-generational component to it that includes families and older adults. So continuing on the next page, which is page 24, you'll notice this looks very similar to the criteria that we just covered about activities in the community. So this is pretty similar because again, there's that word similar. We're going to be comparing all of your applications again to other statewide applications of similar grant requests. So we're going to be looking at the range of natural area trips in that first scoring rubric, the number of natural area trips for the second rubric, and last but not least, the number of youth participants, again, compared to statewide applications of similar grant requests. Technical assistance is available on this criteria on page 53. So if we turn to page 53, you'll see here that we provided examples of eligible activities and education topics. There's quite a few there. You know, you can do everything from camping skills to wildlife viewing, wilderness survival, team building, activities in nature, etc. So pretty extensive list there. On the next page, it continues on page 54. And this talks about the visiting at least one destination of the state park system. Again, this is not mandatory, but you do receive 2 points. You gain 2 points if at least one trip is to the state park system. Again, we want to remind you to get as many points as possible to be as competitive as possible. The last is that 5-mile radius again. So the 5-mile radius is again that straight line distance from the community home base and not driving routes. So again, think 5-mile radius. Inside the 5-mile radius are your activities in the community. That's criteria 3. Outside of that 5-mile radius from the community home base, those are going to be your natural area trips, which is that criteria 4, which is this one that we just talked about. Okay, so with that, actually we are at the hour mark right now. So I'm gonna suggest we take a break.
Thanks, Christine.
Victor has his hand up. Go ahead, Victor.
Great, great. Thank you. So before break, I just want you to all think about a key, really the best point we can make today during this webinar. While we're doing our best to answer all questions, you know, you'll see that most of the answers are provided by citing the guidelines, and you have to become really familiar with these guidelines. There's a lot of clarity built into them to help guide you, to help plan your program. So the scoring rubrics that Christine just covered are something I really want to redirect your attention to. Make sure that you're following the goals to score as many points as you can. For example, if we go back to page 23, Nikki, if you look at the very bottom of page 23, you'll see the scoring rubric. Let's just say you already have nature areas in mind and none of them are a state park. So in this example, you'll see that there's it says at least one natural area trip will be to destination of the state park system. That's an example where if you weren't planning that as of now, today I would encourage you to add one more destination to a state park, so that way you'll score those 2 points. We recommend that you do everything you can to plan to score every point that is within your control. So this is an example where if your proposal involves at least one trip to a state park, you get the 2 points guaranteed. It doesn't mean you can't go to like other national parks or local regional parks, city parks, tribal land, etc. But to score those 2 points, you have to include in your plans a trip to state park. And also on the bottom, let's say you were planning to only serve fifth graders, for example. Well, to score the 2 points, you'll have to plan at least one nature area trip that will include other age groups like families, parents, legal guardians, or other older adults. So that's the key takeaway before we take break for you is pay very close attention to the scoring rubrics and make sure that you adjust your plans according to scoring the most points possible. Okay. Thanks a lot. So we'll do a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 2:15.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you all had a good break. We're going to go ahead and jump back into the guide, starting with page 25 for grant selection criteria number 5, which is for participant recruitment plan. This criteria question asks for a strategy for inviting, recruiting, and encouraging residents with an emphasis on youth that live within a half-mile of the community home base to participate in the outdoor program. Applicants will be able to select from at least 3 of the 10 methods listed in technical assistance, which can be found on page 55. And you'll also explain why these methods will be effective. Some of these methods could include number 2, collaborating with local schools. Schools can also send notices through an online portal or use flyers to inform families and youth about when and where upcoming events will take place. Number 4, conducting door-to-door in-person invitations. And number 7 there, mailing flyers to residences within the half-mile radius. These are just 3 of the 10 methods that could be used to recruit participants. Let's go ahead and turn to page 26 for grant selection criteria number 6, internships. Internships for this criteria are ones that can be used for future employment resumes or college admissions for natural resources, environmental justice, or outdoor recreation professions. The scoring rubric below shows that the maximum points will be given for 3 interns at 200 hours each. The internships need to be directly related to the outdoor program. Technical assistance can be found on page 56. And on page 56, there is a list of 7 types of eligible internship services. Internships can be paid or unpaid. If the internship is paid, this is an eligible grant expense. If you have any questions on this criteria, go ahead and add that to the chat feature. And we are going to go ahead and turn to page 27. For grant selection criteria number 7, partnerships and capacity building. Criteria 7 focuses on partnerships with the applicant to help achieve any of the goals outlined on grant selection criteria number 3, activities in the community, grant selection number 4, natural area trips, or grant selection criteria number 6, internships. The scoring rubric on this page shows the maximum points will be given to applicants with 3 or more partnerships. If you look at the bottom of this page, the responses in the application will be sufficient to describe partnership rules at the time of application. If the OEP grant is awarded and the grantee plans to use grant funds to pay a partner, an agreement between the partner and the grantee must be formalized to include the following: description of the service to be provided, time period for those services, amount of the OEP grant that the grantee will pay the partner, and those partners must report eligible cost expenditures to the grantee. It is the grantee's responsibility to keep those records for an audit. Now let's go ahead and turn to page 57 to review the technical assistance. Let's go over a few of the partnership examples. Partnership example number 1, capacity building, such as teaching the applicant or another partner a service skill, cultural awareness training, administrative assistance, mentoring, etc. Partnership example number 6, contributing volunteer experiences. Partnership example number 7, contributing materials, equipment, supplies, food, etc. In partnership, example number 8, contributing cash donations. Keep in mind there's no point advantage for greater amounts of committed funds or cash. Scrolling further down on this page, there's a few examples that will not receive credit for partnerships. Number 1, entrance to destinations. An entity charging a standard non-discounted entrance admission fee that the public would pay for is not a partnership. Number 2, destination operators. Visiting a destination such as a park or beach is not considered a partnership unless the destination's operator contributes to the outdoor program beyond the routine programming available to the public. And number 3, paying vendors. Paying for-profit vendors full price for services such as transportation charter, rentals, lessons, activities, etc. is not a partnership. If you have any questions on these examples or this criteria, please add them to the chat feature. And I will now hand it over to Esme.
Thanks, Julianne. All right, so if we can please turn to page 28. We're going to go over the grant selection criteria number 8, mentoring youth leaders after the grant performance period. So for this criteria, we're asking applicants to provide a plan for mentoring youth after the grant funds have expired. Sustaining the outdoor program beyond the grant performance period is not required. However, this is about engaging your youth after the outdoor program grant has ended. So within the plan, we're asking applicants to describe how many youth will be selected as having potential to become future environmental leaders in California, as well as the type of activities the mentoring will involve and the approximate time frame. Or if it's not possible to mentor youth after the grant performance period, please explain that and explain why. So now if we go to page 58 for the technical assistance for criteria number 8. Great, thanks, Nikki. So for example, an annual community needs assessment about environmental justice may be conducted and reported by youth. So this concludes the grant selection portion of the Outdoor Equity Program application guide. If you have any questions, please make sure you add that in the chat feature. Now we're going to turn to page 29, and we're going to go over the Community Fact Finder Report and certification. So this page summarizes the steps we discussed earlier in this workshop regarding the Community Fact Finder. So let's remember, only one final Community Fact Finder report for your community home base may be included with each application. So now let's turn to page 30 to view the Community Fact Finder certification form. This is signed by the authorizing representative, and it certifies that you place your PIN on or inside the boundary of your community home base for your report. If you have any questions regarding this section, please add that in the chat feature. Now we're going to move on to page 31. Great, thanks, Nikki. We're going to go over the authorizing resolution. The authorizing resolution shows that your governing body approves the application. Please note in the format section, highlighted here, thank you, Nikki, the language provided in this resolution must remain unchanged. So now if we can move to page 32, and this is the authorizing resolution template. Please note that there is a fillable template available on the OEP webpage. Any questions, please make sure you add that in the chat feature, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Esme. If we can please turn to page 33. Excellent. Okay, so this is the grant scope cost estimate form. And so on this page, on page 33, is the instructions for the form. And then on the following page is the actual form itself. So we're going to first go over the instructions here on this page. So the instructions on this page is how to establish the grant scope and provide a cost estimate for your outdoor program. So later on in this workshop, I'm going to be going over the eligible costs and provide examples of what those costs can be and how they can be included within this grant scope cost estimate form. So on this form, applicants will list only the activities that will be funded by the grant, plus any committed funds if applicable during the grant performance period. These lump sum estimated costs of the activities must be consistent with the responses to grant selections 3 and 4. Please do not include any future costs. It is important to note that the total program costs must cover all the activities in the community and the natural area trips described in grant selection criteria 3, and then you're going to add 4 next to that 3. So if you have a little pen there, it's going to be both criteria and 3 and 4. Next, up to 5% contingency for costs can be folded into the line items. Please do not list contingency as a separate line item. So you're going to fold those costs into your activities in the community or natural area trips, etc. Also, please check the math and dollar amounts between all forms in the application to ensure the grant request and the total program costs are consistent. And all of the amounts must be rounded to the nearest dollar. So again, all of the costs, which are going to be on your application form, the grant scope cost estimate form, and your funding sources form, which Julianne will be talking about in a little bit, they all need to match each other. They all have to have the same grant asks and the same total program costs. So we understand that actual costs may change during the outdoor program. In most cases, a revised grant scope cost estimate form is not required when estimated costs fluctuate during the outdoor program. So now that we've gone over the instructions regarding this form, we're going to turn to the next page. So on this next page, this is the actual form itself. So you'll see here at the top there that you'll be putting your activities in the community in that section. And again, those are all the responses consistent with that grant selection criteria 3. And then you're going to be putting the total costs for these activities in the community on that right-hand side. Below that are the natural area trips. So again, you're going to be putting your trip destinations there. And then if a destination will be visited more than once, you're going to put that parentheses around the destination's name with the number of reoccurring trips. You're going to be putting the natural area trip costs to the right of those boxes in that total cost section. And then if you scroll down here, you're going to add all of those up. So for number 1, you're going to have the total cost of all activities in the community and natural area trips will be in that box number 1. And then if you're having any internship costs from that grant selection criteria 6, you're going to put them for number 2. When you're having your liability insurance premium costs that will cover the entire outdoor program, you're going to be listing those insurance premium costs for number 3. And then you're going to be adding all of those up, and that's going to be your total program cost. And that's what you're going to have for number 4. Last but not least, under there, then that's where you're going to be putting your requested grant amount at the bottom. All right, so with that, we're going to move on to the next page, which is page 35. This is the grant scope cost estimate certification. This certification encourages applicants to be aware of the eligible cost rules when developing their grant scope cost estimate form. So for this, it just makes applicants aware, you know, that the applicant understands that the items located on that grant scope cost estimate form will be used to establish the grant deliverables. Also, that the cost estimate is for the trips during that grant performance period, and to use the most economical use of state funds, which I'll be going over again in the eligible cost section. All right, and so another thing to mention, the grant scope cost estimate form and the certification, they are also on our webpage as fillable forms. The actual form itself is going to look a little bit different. We've actually expanded the form into 3 different pages. And so the first page will be your activities in the community. So you'll have a whole page to add as many activities in the community. The second page of that fillable form is going to be all of the natural area trips. And then last but not least, the third page of that form will be those totals that we had gone over. So again, that form and this cost estimate certification, they are found on our webpage under fillable forms. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Julianne, and she's going to go over the funding sources form. And if you have any questions about the grant scope cost estimate form, please put them in the chat feature. So there you go, Julianne, you're up.
Thank you, Christine. All right, so let's go ahead and turn to page 36, which it looks like we're already there. Thank you, Nikki. So this is for the funding sources form. This page includes instructions on how to list the outdoor program's funding sources and any participant fees or loan sources, if applicable, on the funding sources form. Let's go ahead and actually turn to page 37 to view the funding sources form. There is a fillable template available on the OEP webpage. If the grant itself will fund the total program costs, then on the top right and bottom right boxes on the form, you'll show the requested grant amount only. If the outdoor program will have any other funding sources in addition to the grant request, then identify each funding source by name, source, amount, and committed date on this form. Again, check the math and dollar amounts between all forms and the application to ensure the grant request amount and total program costs are consistent. If the outdoor program will have any participant fees, list the total estimated amount that will be charged on the form. These fees are charged to participants for costs beyond what the grant will pay for. If any part of the outdoor program will involve fees charged to the participants, the amount charged should be reasonable, as the applicant will need to consider participants affected by poverty. Let's turn back to page 36. If a funding source is a loan, the applicant must identify the type of loan and shall not use any grant funds for the purpose of making any leverage loan, pledge, promissory note, or similar financial device or transaction without the prior written approval. Lastly, if the funding sources change during the grant performance period, A revised form is required within 30 days. Now, let's go ahead and turn to page 38 for checklist item number 7, applicant capacity. Here, applicants will answer 5 questions regarding their capacity to achieve the outdoor program during the grant performance period and their implementation plan for sustaining a successful program. Applicants will respond to the following areas to establish capacity. Number 1, previous experience with outdoor programs. Number 2, clarity that the applicant will oversee administration if the grant is awarded. Number 3, previous grant funding received. Number 4, previous or ongoing relationships with the residents or stakeholders near the community home base. And number 5, whether or not permits are required and what the plan is to obtain them. The applicant will answer letters A through C listed below, which includes A, where the applicant describes if the landowners of the locations listed in the response to grant selection criteria number 4 have been contacted and determined if a permit is required. And then for B, if the landowner stated a permit is required, the applicant will provide a copy of the permit or agreement or a plan and timeline to secure the permit or agreement. And in letter C, if a permit or agreement is not needed, the applicant will describe the steps taken to verify that no permit or agreement with any of the properties will be required. Please put any questions you have in the chat feature, and I will now hand it over to Esme. Oh, it looks like Victor, you want to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Julianne, and thanks, Esme. Got a good question that I think I'd like to just share with all of you. We had a question from Dottie, and that was, are the number of activities per year or per the grant cycle? And so I just want to emphasize that everything that you describe in your application, whether it's your response to the criteria section or your cost estimate, your grant request, et cetera, is based on what you propose to accomplish through the grant's performance period only. So don't talk about activities you've done in the past when it comes to the criteria or what you would do in 2040. Just keep all your information and your response to, I'm sorry, except for this thing, because the page we're on right now about experience and capacity does look backwards. It does look at your past track record in some cases, but when it comes to the criteria and what you're asking for funding, it's all your information will be based on what you would do from the time of the grant award, which is estimated for summer of next year, so summer of 2024 through spring of 2027. So, for example, when you respond to the nature area trips criteria 4, that will be what you proposed, where you propose to take participants during the grant's performance period only. So from no earlier than, I'd say, late summer, early fall 2024 through spring of 2027. Another question we got about that in prior workshops was, do you have to propose programming during that entire period? For example, maybe some of the applicants only want to do programming for a year or even one summer season. That is eligible. And that's another reason why we created the grant request range options that Christine covered earlier, where we break the competition down into $100,000 segments, because we understand that folks that are coming in for, let's say, less money, like 50,000 or 120,000, don't have to compete against applicants that are requesting 700,000. So we do understand that, generally speaking, if you're requesting less money, you may be taking less trips or possibly involving less participants. So that's why we've created categories now. And if you want to see again, Nikki, if you could take the group to the bottom of page 63 through the top of page 64, that's just a refresher of what Christine covered earlier for the grant request range. So it is eligible to only, for example, propose programming for 1 year, like 2025, for example. So hope that helps. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks, Victor. All right, so we're going to move on to the application guide. If we can please turn to page 39. Awesome, thanks, Nikki. We're going to go over checklist number 8, the reporting certification. So applicants will need to keep clear records for the reporting requirements stated under Assembly Bill 209. In order to meet those requirements, grantees will submit annually the 5 listed reporting requirements shown here to the Office of Grants and Local Services through an online reporting system, and before the final grant payment is approved. If you have any questions regarding to this checklist item, please add that to the chat feature. We're going to move on to page 40. Thanks, Nikki. And we're going to go over checklist item number 9, nonprofit requirements. So if you're a nonprofit, this is your section definitely to pay close attention to. So this page asks applicants who are nonprofits to provide information regarding your IRS status, the most recent filed federal 990 forms, and other state required reporting requirements from the Attorney General's office and the California Franchise Tax Board. I want to direct your attention to the 4 bullets listed on page 40, such as articles of incorporation, mission statements, etc. Keep in mind, these items listed here can be requested at any time during the review process from our office. If you have any questions, please add that to that chat feature, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Christine.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Esme. Okay, so now we're going to talk about those eligible and ineligible costs. And so this starts on page 41. And so these eligible costs are the costs that you're going to be putting on that grant scope cost estimate form that I had discussed earlier in the workshop. So here we go. Planning costs can date back into the date of appropriation. What is the appropriation date? It is July 1st, 2023. So planning costs back to that date are eligible if the grant is awarded. But remember that the program cannot start until after the funds are awarded, which again is estimated to be summer of 2024. The eligible costs for activities in the community and natural area trips are split into 4 different categories. So those categories are supplies, equipment, and activity fees, travel costs, labor costs, and insurance for all activities necessary for the outdoor program. So let's turn to the next page, which is 42. And here at the top, you'll see that we list out the cost for supplies, equipment, and activity fees and admissions. So again, we will pay for activity fees, activity supplies and equipment, and supplies that can be kept by the participant. So those are program t-shirts, reusable bottles, hats, tote bags that are necessary for the outdoor program. All other activity supplies and equipment must be retained by the grantee and used for future programming. Also, let's take a look at that 5th bullet point there where Nikki's highlighting. And so this is where we talk about that most economical use of state funds. So for supplies and equipment that will cost over $500 per single unit item and or $10,000 per purchase transaction, and which can be purchased, leased, or rented, the most economical use of state funds must be applied. This means that the grantee will use the most affordable option to complete the outdoor program during the grant performance period by either renting, leasing, or purchasing the supplies and equipment. So an example that we can use for what is economical use of state funds. So let's say that a grantee wants to take 10 participants surfing for 3 trips. Well, it may be more economical to rent 10 surfboards each time rather than actually purchasing 10 surfboards. So again, you're going to be looking at those types of things. What is the most economical? Should you rent some items, or would be leasing or purchasing those items be more economical? So those are the things that we want applicants to take a look at when we talk about this most economical use of state funds. So again, a detailed budget is not required this round. However, you will need to create one to figure out your own costs if you're going to be purchasing, leasing, renting, etc. Because again, you'll be signing that grant estimate certification form that you did those items, that you did look at the most economical use of state funds. All right, so moving on to that part B, travel costs. So travel must be within California only. Travel cannot be outside of California. Also, overnight accommodations are eligible. If we move on to the next page on 43, I want to particularly call your attention to the daily meal budget per participant for those natural area trips. So an average of $20 per meal, which includes drinks and snacks, is allowed. If 3 meals are necessary per day, the total maximum per participant is $60 per day. And so underneath there where Nikki's highlighted, you can see the calculation formula for those costs. And the next item is, we talk about further down the page here, is vehicle use for transportation of participants. So you can see what that involves, and that follows on the next page as well, on page 44. So we talk about vehicle usage, if they're going to be chartered, rented, owned, leased, etc. We have all the instructions regarding the eligible costs for vehicles on that page. The next item is for C, and that's labor costs. So for labor costs, again, it's going to include all eligible costs for employee services. And it's important to note there that you must see accounting rules for employee services explained in the grant administrative guide, which is that first bullet point underneath labor. The grant administration guide is found on our webpage, on the OEP webpage. And so it's on the tab that's underneath the application tab. So you'll want to click through that grant admin guide to get some awareness of what the accounting rules, an example of a contract will look like, etc. So other labor costs that are eligible are, internships consistent with that grant selection criteria 3, activity providers, program management, communication and training, reporting, and that grant administration and accounting for this program are all eligible costs. On the next page, page 45, it goes into Part D. This is insurance requirements if awarded. So premiums on liability insurance, including aggregate coverage for all activities necessary for the outdoor program, are eligible. There is an insurance policy checklist that lists the insurance policy requirements for grantees. And that's listed on our website under the Grant Administrative tab on our OEP webpage. So that insurance checklist is under that same place that you'll find that grant administration guide that was under those labor costs. So you'll want to take a look at those items on our webpage. Again, underneath there, please keep all records of all costs for audit purposes. And so you can read all of the items that we are requesting that you keep underneath there. Okay, so let's move on to, we've talked about eligible costs. So now we're going to take a look at ineligible costs. And so I'm going to go through each of these. So the ineligible costs are any costs that occur before or after that grant performance period. Other costs that are ineligible, these are any indirect costs, which include overhead business expenses of the grantee's fixed or ordinary operating costs. So this includes rent, mortgage payment, property taxes, utilities, office supplies, etc. Any capital projects, construction, development of land or land acquisition. You can see their examples include, greenhouses, planter boxes, any heavy construction equipment, etc. Land alteration projects that would require SECRA, etc. are ineligible. So any capital projects ineligible. Vehicle acquisition for ownership. Any class 3 e-bikes which exceed 20 miles per hour. Any routine park maintenance. Fundraising. Foods for activities in the community. These are ineligible costs. So again, serving meals during activities in the community is ineligible. However, food that is being prepared as an activity in the community for the purpose of consumption during the natural area trips is the only exception. Travel outside the state of California, again, ineligible. Gifting of equipment to participants or the general public. You can see there the different items purchased with the grant funds. So non-consumable supplies and equipment purchased with grant funds must be retained by the grantee for a period equivalent to the life of the equipment. Grantees are encouraged to continue using purchased equipment after the grant performance period for programming. If grant-funded equipment is disposed of or sold during the grant performance period, the residual market value must be used for eligible costs or paid back to the state. Another ineligible cost, any gifting of passes to participants or the general public for use other than the planned purpose or times of the natural area trips or activities in the community for the outdoor program. Any gifting of awards, trophies, plaques, ribbons, medals, and prizes, etc. are ineligible. Also, gifting of money, such as promotional gift cards to recruit or reward participants for non-eligible costs. And so an example of that you can see on the top of, on the next page, on the top of page 47, that a $100 gas gift card without receipts documenting the actual purchase of gas for the purpose of the grant scope would be ineligible. Also, 500 gift card to participants without documentation of a stipend. These items are ineligible. Also, grant writing and programs imposed on an applicant through legal mitigation. So these 2 pages here are examples of ineligible costs. Again, we're telling applicants, please, 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 keep records of all costs for audit purposes. During an audit, a lack of record keeping can make even claimed eligible costs ineligible. So again, please, please keep receipts for everything. All right. So if you have any questions about eligible or ineligible costs, please put those in the chat feature. And so now that ends the cost segment. And so I'm going to have us turn to page 48. Perfect. And here is the appendices here. And so this lists all the technical assistance for applicants. And so you can see here, the first part is the application workshops, which is exactly what you're doing right now. So we are helping out applicants during this workshop. Also, that all applicants have access to their competitive review project officers until that application due date. Again, to get a list of your competitive review project officers, you're going to click on that link right there where Nikki's clicking. Oh, good. Here we go. Perfect. And then you're going to scroll down to where, sorry, she's circling where it says project officers by county. And so go ahead and click that. Perfect. And so on the left-hand side there, under the green section, these are your competitive project officers per county. So whatever county you're in, you're going to look at the county on the left-hand side. And the person next to that in the green, that is who your project officer is. And so please reach out to that person by email or giving them a call on their phone number there. So that's where you'll find all of your contacts. So if we go back to the guide, perfect. You want to scroll down a little bit there. So assistance with incomplete application documents. So project officers can provide feedback on the checklist items with the exception of project selection criteria, which is that checklist item 2. So any of the criteria questions we cannot provide feedback for. However, any of the other incomplete items we will be happy to help you with. If there are still incomplete items after the application deadline, your project officer will help work with you to determine the timelines for those items. You know, remember, we are all here, all of us project officers are here to help you with every step of the process. So, last but not least here, again, you know, use those technical assistance pages, again, that are starting on the next page, that 49. Really use those when you're looking at putting together your criteria sections, because they definitely provide that more in-depth technical assistance for each criteria. So this concludes the OEP application portion of the application workshop. So again, with all of that, please put any questions that you have in the chat feature. And I'm going to hand it over to Victor.
Thank you, Christine. Great job, everyone. So we're going to be with you all the way through 4 o'clock to answer your questions, and you can we can have a group discussion. You can unmute yourself after I cover a few next steps, and then our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, will provide some thoughts for you. And then after Cedric closes, then we'll open it up and be here to answer all your questions. Great job keeping us busy in the chat feature. You've all been asking some really good questions today, and we really appreciate your questions. Let's talk about next steps first. First of all, the application guide that we've gone through today is your #1 go-to source. After you get more familiar with it, and please be aware that our team's here to help you all the way through the application deadline. So first, I'm going to ask Nikki to go to our website, which is, again, someone please post the website, but it's parks.ca.gov/OEP. And Nikki's showing where that is. And we're going to take you, first of all, to our staff contact list, so you'll know who to go to when you have questions. And I will say that probably in a few months, we're going to have a shift of contacts because we're going to go through a slight reorganization. But I want to really emphasize that our team takes pride in being helpful, and they're a friendly group of people, and they really enjoy providing service. So, please reach out to your contact. So your contact for this application process will be the competitive application pre-award project officer. That's the green column. So let's say your community home base will be somewhere in Alameda County. Your contact would then be Julianne Coronado. Okay, so that's your go-to list here for technical assistance. The second thing I wanted to bring to light is back on our website in the application process section, we have a link to the online application system called Submittable. So there's the link. I highly encourage you to start playing around with it, create your account, start drafting your application. Now, I know some folks have told us they don't want to draft the application too early because they think we'll be snooping around and start making assumptions. We cannot see your application until you click the submit button. So when you're in the drafting stage, we cannot see what you're drafting. So you can go ahead and enter anything you want. We won't be able to see it. You can but I do encourage you to start getting as familiar as possible with the system. Please don't wait until December 14 to start entering your application. I definitely encourage you to start early on that. So the application system will shut down at 5 p.m. sharp on December 14th. So start early. Please don't wait till the final day. And the next thing is let's go back to our timeline. Okay. So just to recap from what Christine covered earlier, where are we? So we are in the technical assistance workshops phase still. We have one more workshop tomorrow. And then again, our team will be available to assist you all the way through December 14th. We expect to make the grant award announcements by summer of 2024. I recognize that's a broad date. It's a broad time frame. It's for one reason is we cannot predict right now the number of applications. And of course, the more applications, the more time it takes to go through everything. Now, we'll say that part of our application review process includes technical assistance. If we find a mistake on a form or something is not clear, we may go back to you and say, hey, you need to fix this form, or can you please, revise this or clarify that. The only thing that we're not going to allow corrections to is your response to the grant selection criteria, which is a scoring. We start using that right away, and your response to the criteria section will be frozen by the time you submit your application by or before December 14th at 5 p.m. Our grant announcements may take place in late spring, early summer. But then after that happens, you'll go through grant administration workshops to get you ready to be a grantee in our administrative team will also review your insurance requirements and make sure you're ready to go to launch your program. Once that happens, then you receive your grant agreement. So that can take place sometime in late summer, maybe early fall. For those reasons, we've had a few questions from some folks saying, should we just plan to start our program in early 2025? That's fine. But again, I'd say like late summer, early fall would be the soonest that you can plan to start your program. Your end date will be spring of 2027. So plan to complete your program by spring of 2027. Okay. Again, thanks for your questions. I'll get back to chat and we'll answer a few more questions in chat. After our Deputy Director, Cedric Mitchell, will provide some thoughts, then we'll open it up for your questions, and you can go ahead and raise your hand and we'll show you how to do that and we'll call on you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, everyone, thank you again for attending this particular workshop. I hope you found it to be helpful and interesting and that you're fired up to come up with some creative and innovative programming. It's not often that we get a program in the state that really allows for us to pay for those things that have been barriers in the past, staffing costs and equipment costs and travel costs. These are all about non-capital projects. It's about programmatic activities. So that's one of the exciting things that we have going here. Also, we want to encourage you to really think beyond the boxes here, thinking in terms of not just what you're doing currently, but what you can do with these funds. We often have said in the beginning when we were working with focus groups to talk about how these programs were going to be rolled out, what everyone agreed on at the beginning was that this had to be different. It wasn't just business as usual. It's an opportunity for us to do things in a way that can have outcomes that will hopefully take us to the next highest level. One of the things that we've done in the past, and there have been some wonderful programs that have had some success, but overall, we have not had the kind of success that we need. Still, people are being underserved. Communities have been forgotten for one reason or another, and investments in those communities just don't seem to flow as much as we all like to see. But the reality is simply this: by accepting the fact that maybe we didn't succeed, the generation before us didn't necessarily succeed. And I say that kind of loosely from the standpoint that if we had, we wouldn't have had this program and we wouldn't be here talking about how we can serve communities overall. So the reason I'm saying this is that we have a chance to do something a little bit uniquely different and to have this time next year over 200 organizations collectively on the same path toward providing opportunities for communities around the state that otherwise were not there. The uniqueness of this program is multiple fold, and one, that we're going to pay for you to go into communities and engage with people where they are. So this isn't about just taking people on trips. It's also about empowering communities and looking for ways that when the money is run out, that the communities will be able to not necessarily have to go through any of us or through a steward in order to access what is right there in this nature. We want to empower communities to be able to continue on engaging nature wherever they are, whether it's in their own backyards or whether they're miles away. The cool thing about all of this is that it helps us to develop a collective ethos about the natural world that only leads us towards saving this planet. If we're going to do that, it has to be relevant, and relevancy starts at home. This is one of the opportunities, unique opportunities for us to begin looking at it from that standpoint. So I encourage you to think in terms of how you can transform communities, impact them in ways that are going to be well beyond what we used to do, but thinking in terms of how we might be able to help the next generation to not have this conversation, but connecting to nature just becomes a natural part of our lives. If there's anything that the team can do to help you to put your best foot forward, we want to do that. I also want to just encourage you, if you, as was stated earlier, that the Outdoor Equity Program recipients gain 2 free slots at the Outdoor Recreation Leadership Program training that we have through our Office of Community Involvement. I just want to emphasize that the training is not necessarily just how to set up a tent. It really is about empowering communities, about communication skill development, about how to engage with people in the outdoors. But most importantly, it's about building community and overcoming fears and giving people the opportunity to do to take to control their own destinies. So if you get a chance, that schedule will be coming out in a few weeks for next year. We encourage you to attend, whether you're a recipient or not. We encourage you to attend. Those who do seem to believe and are showing exceptional work that they're being able to do. One last thing I would mention here is what we found over the years is that the greatest barrier to getting youth in the outdoors are the adults in their lives. So if we can collectively come together and figure out a way in which we can move forward together, I think getting young people, adults, seniors out into nature will be a little bit easier for us all. And nature's the one that will benefit, and when nature benefits, we all do. I'm going to stop here and again want to thank you. I want to encourage you to put your best foot forward. We are here cheering for you. Anything we can do again to help, please let us know. And I'll end the meeting here, and the team and I will stick around to answer any questions that you might have live. Okay, everyone have a great and safe journey if you're on the road. If you're at home, have a wonderful day. Thank you. Victor, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Cedric. All right, we have someone's hand up. Let's see. I think the first one was, let's see here, Alexandra.
Hi, my name is Alexandra. I'm sorry I couldn't put this question in the chat because it kept glitching even though I tried to log off and log back in. My question is related to fiscal sponsors. I noticed on the checklist item number 9, nonprofit requirements, it doesn't, I don't see at least where it talks about requirements for fiscal sponsors. I did see I think it's page 57 where there talks a little bit about fiscal sponsors. I was hoping you could just shed some light on what that partnership needs to look like in any documentation that was necessary.
Excellent. Yeah, great question. Okay, I love it. You're citing pages for us. You're that's great. Okay, so the first thing is if the fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit organization, then let me backtrack. So a fiscal sponsor, everyone would typically is an organization that takes care of the administration of the grant and ensures that the partners are operating the program. So the way we would normally define a fiscal sponsor is that we assume the fiscal sponsor would be the grant applicant, because there can only be one agency or one organization that we go into contract with and send the money to. So in this case, Alexander, would the fiscal sponsor be the grant applicant?
Yes, but in our current configuration, the partnering organization would be doing the administering of the programming.
Okay. So if the applicant is a nonprofit, let's say the fiscal sponsor actually ends up applying, then and it is a nonprofit, then the fiscal sponsor would provide the items on page 40 as a nonprofit applicant. If the fiscal sponsor is not applying, then whoever the applicant is, if the applicant's a nonprofit, the applicant would provide the nonprofit requirements on page 40. Now, the second part is how are partnerships demonstrated, which is the second part of your good question. So let's go back to grant selection criteria number 7 on page 27. Okay, and let's go to the very bottom of that page. There we go. Okay, so on the bottom of page 27, this is where you're describing the proposed partners for your program and what their roles will be. And so here, the responses will be sufficient to describe partnerships at the time of application. If the grant is awarded and the grantee plans to use grant funds to pay a partner, then an agreement between the partner and the grantee must be formalized. That includes the information listed below on page 27. So that's, of course, a description of the service, the time period for the services, the amount of the grant funds that are proposed to pay the partner. And then the partners must report eligible cost expenditures to the grantee. So it is the grantee's responsibility to keep the records for an audit. So the key thing to understand is that when the grant's awarded and the state goes into contract with the applicant, and the applicant then becomes what we call a grantee, the grantee then is really responsible for the record keeping. That's like keeping all receipts of all grants expenditures. And so I would really recommend that whichever organization is best established for administration of state funds to keep all records would be, could be the grant applicant.
Thank you so much. My one follow-up question
Sure.
is there a certain percent of the budget that can go to a fiscal sponsor?
There's not a percentage. It's
Or any partner?
yeah. So basically, if we go to, that's also a great question. If we go to the eligible cost section on page 44. Okay, section C provides labor costs, and you'll see that there's a very broad range of eligible costs for labor for this program. It comes from employee services like accounting, administration, also internships. So if you plan to have any internships, then that's eligible. Of course, program activity providers, which is the actual like nature guides, career pathway educators, etc. Program management, overseeing the logistics, like making sure that transportation is set up, etc. And even if you look at the very bottom bullet point, grants administration and accounting. So it's there. There's really no percentage that we've established, because essentially this entire program is based on employee services, right? And the activities of partners. So administration's a necessary cost, record keeping is a necessary cost, and there's not a percentage of the grant that's set aside for it. It's all eligible.
Thank you so much for answering my questions, and also for this workshop and all of the other things that you've posted online. I've found everything to be very, very helpful. I appreciate all of your time.
Well, thank you for your excellent question. Does that help, or do you have any more follow-ups on my answer?
Oh, that helped tremendously. Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? You can just go ahead and raise your hand. Nikki, can you show them where that symbol is? And then we'll call on you, or just go ahead and unmute yourself. Thanks. Nikki. Oh, okay. You just clicked it to show them. I'm eager for questions. Greg.
Hi there. I work for an organization called Think Together. We offer out-of-school programs K through 12. And as I go through, I'm thinking about internships. I'm also thinking about youth going on trips, and to get a sense of, we are going to apply for multiple home-based opportunities. And we have an opportunity to select an elementary school as a home base or a high school. And I'm trying to get a sense of, are the high school kids, do they have to go on the trips as well? I'm just sort of looking at criteria 6 for internships. And I know this is a very broad non-question, more of a statement, I'm sorry. But the question is, for the internships, do those students need to also be going on the trips if it's within that home base area.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. So let's start off with the technical assistance for internships. Start there first.
Okay.
And give me a second. It's been a few weeks since we've done these workshops, and it's a Monday, so let me find what page that's on. Oh,
Yeah,
Nikki's
no
already
problem.
there.
It's criteria 6. I just looked it up.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
criteria 6. Let's go to page number 56, everyone. And Nikki's already there. All right. So the first thing for internships is there's a wide range of what's allowable. So I'll give you a direct answer first of all. No, interns do not have to go on the trips. And I'll tell you why. Let's scroll down a bit lower. Let's go to the list of 1 through 7. So 1 through 7 on page 56 is a complete list. These aren't just examples. This is a complete list of eligible internships. And so I'll give you an example of a eligible type of internship where the intern may not be going on a nature area trip, and that would be item number 6, administrative duties. You may hire, let's say, a high school student who is going to learn about record keeping or administration, or helping to plan, make reservations for trips, etc. So that's one example. As long as it's specific to supporting the outdoor program. Let's see. Let's look at another one here. Yeah, I think number 7. Number 7 could be like you could have interns that can help, like high school students that may help with outreach in recruiting like families or other age groups or younger people to join the program. We've heard in the past that in a few cases, some of our grantees reported that after the grant was awarded, it was a little difficult to get actual participants to join the trips. So one of our recommendations was to find some local leaders or trusted community members that live in the area to help bridge that gap between the grantee and the community. So maybe some local high school students could help with outreach and make sure, help recruit participants. So that's another example of community development to help with making connections and what have you. I could also see, well, that's enough of examples. So the answer is no, the interns do not have to go on the trips.
No, that's great because it helps us, because we like our elementary to middle to high schools to kind of feed, but obviously we have more elementary schools, and it seems to me we can develop a trip program much more easily for the elementary schools. But at the same time, we're not sending elementary school students on internships. So awesome.
Good
That's a
question.
wonderful answer. Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're welcome.
Okay.
All right. So we got Craig. Who's next? Craig, I'm gonna just to give you a even more robust answer. I'm gonna take you back to a few more things too, just to be aware of, just to kind of emphasize what Christine covered earlier. Nikki, can you go to the nature area trips scoring rubric, criteria 4 on page 23? Okay, so this is a great example, everyone, using Craig's his back description he provided. If you look at the very bottom here, 2-point option where it says at least one nature area trip will include multi-generational residents. If let's just say, Craig, and let's say in your situation you were planning on only taking elementary children to the nature area trips, that is your option. You would just be forfeiting 2 points.
Right. In fact, I was looking at that point 3 when they were originally talking about that. I didn't know if multi-generational meant, the 20-year gap or just multiple age groups, because we certainly can do that as well.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah. We did not define it. So it does
Awesome.
mean older than we did intend for it to mean not just like school children. So I would encourage you to plan one trip, at least one trip that would include either families, older adults. It doesn't mean that the youth have to go. I understand, like with school districts, sometimes there's definitely more liability concerns with
Hmm.
bringing adults with children. But what can qualify is maybe you can partner with another organization that may have experience with working with seniors or
Hmm.
older people with disabilities, etc. Um, or maybe your organization will allow family trips with the elementary kids and their parents or legal guardians. But you have to have at least one trip to score those 2 points
No, that's awesome. And
with
if we
other age
take it
groups.
to, if we do it to a state park, we can double down.
Absolutely. That's correct. Now, there you go. So you're starting to have fun. That's how the game is played.
Exactly. No, that's awesome, Victor. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, good question. Okay. Anyone else want to raise their hand? Marie or Mary?
Yeah, Marie, I have to unmute myself. There we go. And I'm sorry I don't have the guidelines in front of me, so maybe this is in there. But with regard to exposing kids for career paths in outdoor education or outdoor recreation, is there any guidance you can refer me to, or what might be allowed for that, restrictions, ages, etc., in terms of beyond internships where they're actually trained perhaps to be, raft guides or citizen scientists or firefighters or things like that?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. So we received a similar question last week. Julianne, this is kind of similar to your question that you received, right? And the question was, can we do like first aid training, certificate training for all participants? And our response was like, why would that be necessary? So there will be some times where we're going to ask if a certain cost is a necessary cost and necessary use of state funds. So if you're planning on getting, let's just say you're planning on serving, I don't know, 200 youth, and you're planning on getting lifeguard certificates for the 200 youth. We may ask some questions about, why is it necessary for the purpose of the activities during the grants performance period, because it may be possible that if you're taking a group of, let's say, 200 participants to go swimming in a lake, for example, you may only need 10 people that are trained for as lifeguards. So we may ask a few questions if you're trying to get certificates for all participants. Does that help?
Yes, I guess I was thinking of it less as a function of making the outdoor activities successful and more of a program goal in and of itself, particularly for BIPOC kids to be able to pursue careers specifically in outdoor education or outdoor programming. That in and of itself, it's a goal of the program that would allow them to get a training or be hired as something that's valuable.
Okay. Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think our team would, if it's not clear in the, in the response to the criteria, we'd probably ask some follow-up questions like, what is the process you envision to kind of help them kind of know where to look for the jobs after they're certified. And there's also a mentoring youth after the grant performance period criteria on page 28, where you may plan as an organization that if you get youth certified for outdoor careers, that could be a really good idea. Is once they have a certification, you're planning to kind of keep in touch with them and help steer them in that direction and make sure they know where to apply or how to apply, etc. But that's possible.
That's great. And as I guess a follow-up, if I got a second, is related to getting either high school credits or AP credits for sort of the environmental science components, if we're including that for them to learn to be citizen scientists in the outdoors.
Yeah, that's definitely I think that's eligible even within the definition of education on let's see here, on page 60 through 61, if Nikki, if you could go there. Yeah, so it looks like that could either fit under item 1, which is instruction in arts, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics that connects nature experiences or environmental stewardship. And also item 3, curriculum aligned with the content standards for public schools adopted by the State Board of Education. But I think there's a lot of flexibility in item 1 on page 60. And I think Cedric has his hand up. He may want to add.
Those are great questions. So what I would encourage you to do is take a look at a couple of things when you're developing your program. One, you're developing a program for all your participants, but keep separate the idea of your program for internships, because not every person who's going to go through your program is going to be an intern. So the idea that your interns, as part of their development, is to make sure that they are CPR certified because of the activities you're going to be doing makes perfect sense. And it makes more sense to us probably when reviewing an application than every person becoming certified for that purpose, because you're looking at interns and what you're trying to do for career path for those interns. And then programmatically, however, when you're looking collectively, if you're saying, for example, you want to create an opportunity for people to become greater citizen scientists, the activities that you do and the manner and the trips that you take are going to probably influence that outcome, right? Because you're going to be doing things, purchasing equipment, teaching skill sets that are going to help them to move toward becoming better citizen scientists. So I would just encourage you to think about it in those terms. There's what your program objectives are, and then of course the internship is a different approach because you're probably going to be working with teens and above, and the goal behind the internship is to give that the kinds of skills that ultimately help your program and help the individual to grow as a person and as a potential career opportunity. So with most internships, and as a former intern, multiple intern, the things that I learned were things that were practical to the profession and that helped my mentors to better deliver the programs that they were delivering at that time. And so that's what I would encourage you. It might help as you're separating out your budget, separating out your ideas, and defining what activities are going to be for what parts of your program. Back to you, Victor.
Thanks, Cedric. Does that help, Maria? Or would you like some more follow-up questions on that?
I'm just trying to get off mute. Yeah, no, that's great. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Cedric. Okay. All right, who's next? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, I see a question. Cameron asked, I'm going through chat now. Cameron asked a question. Is there an invoicing process? Nikki, can you please go, great question, Cameron. Please go to our website and let's show where the grant administration process information is found. The answer is yes, there definitely is an invoicing process. There's a separate section for grantees on our website. So Nikki's showing on your screen that the tab is called Grant Administration. That occurs after your application is selected for funding. And there's a link. The first link is to the administration guide. And Nikki, go ahead and pull that. Go ahead and click that link. And then let's just go to the table of contents. Okay, so this is the guide that you would use if you are selected for funding in round 2. And you'll see that starting on page 13 through page 21, there's the grant payment section, which covers the payment process and invoicing. Basically, there's a payment request form and there's something called a grants expenditure form where you list the costs that you are charging to the grant. Okay, all right. Thank you. Any questions about, any more questions? Go ahead and raise your hand. Aaron.
Yes. My name is Aaron, and I work with the Quechan Indian tribe. And the reservation that we preside on is way in the southeast corner of California. It's basically on the border of California and Arizona. Majority of the reservation is on the California side, which our residents live on. And it's pretty rural. In regards to the activities and trips and so forth, one of the questions that I got was we could do site visits to some of our traditional sites that we have that are not traditionally mapped out, but are visited by our tribal members and so forth, and those education can be done on those. But they were asking about trips that are basically going to be going off of reservation that are outside that 5-mile radius. And it would be basically almost about a 3 to 4 hour trip. If we were to stay within California, which the nearest area that would have a zoo or park for educational purposes and camping sites for educational purposes is San Diego. So they were wondering if that would be eligible, because it did say overnight trips can be considered, but they were just wanting to make sure that these trips that are going to be long distances from the initial site, would that be okay and not really frowned upon, because we are kind of rural and there's not much around us to do educational things or outdoor activities, because we're mostly in a desert area.
Oh yeah, no, great question. So the good news is it's eligible to travel to a natural area destination anywhere within California from your home base. So so you definitely can take the participants from the tribal land to any beach, mountains, forest, rivers, lakes, with even other tribal land, as long as it's within California. It could be all the way up to the Oregon border from where you're at. So if they've never seen a redwood forest, it's eligible.
Yeah. All right, then I'll let them know about that, because they were kind of concerned about that, because we are in, like I said, very rural and a desert area, and they just wanted to make sure if we were going to be traveling out, because a lot of our traditional trails do go up to San Diego and LA area. So they were wanting to just make sure, that type of education from our elders to our youth could be conducted, in those areas. Or like you said, as long as it's in California, it's okay.
It's
As long
absolutely
as we
okay.
justify it. Okay, then I'll
Exactly.
let them know that. Thank you very much.
Okay, and let me add a little bit more to the answer just to make sure I gave you like a really thorough answer.
Mhm.
The travel costs, Nikki already has it on the screen. It starts on section B on page 42. So if campsite rentals are eligible, if you keep going to page 43, and Nikki highlighted where it says travel must be within California. So yeah, you can definitely show them that anywhere within California is eligible. And then on page 43, it covers like meals for the trips. So um, an average of $20 per meal is eligible as well for like the overnight trips or day trips. Um, so we have that guidance for you. And then keep going, Nikki. Let's see if there's anything else in there. Vehicles. So the grants can pay for renting vehicles, for example. So if if you need to like hire a bus service, for example, that's eligible.
Mhm.
Okay, and then let's keep going. I think there's something about hotels as well. Oh yeah, also like even trains, buses, boats, airplanes. That's all eligible within California. So you don't have to just drive. It is possible to take a group of residents in a flight from the bottom of California, let's say San Diego Airport, up to Northern California, for example. That is also eligible. Um, and then for overnight stays in hotels, um, the grantee would be required to document the most economical selection um, by looking at three potential, hotels as well. So it could either pay for hotels or campsites, for example, during your travel. And the last thing I want to make sure we're clear on is the definition of nature area trips. When you mentioned museums, we just want to be. We saw a few applicants in the first round that were proposing to go to museums that were not clearly like aligned with this program. Let's just say one example would be I'm trying to think of an example. Let's just say a classic car museum. All right. I mean, that really doesn't have anything to do with like natural and cultural history. So we added some clarification in the definition, and I'll for nature area trips, it says that it's a location outside the 5-mile radius from the community home base that is challenging to access by residents, such as beaches, rivers, lakes, forests, mountains, deserts, tribal land, state and national parks within California. So if it's challenging for them to access, it's even, shows a better need for the grants. I mean, that's really the purpose of this program. So you can tell the people that are asked that question, you can cite that definition on page 62. And the second part of the definition says that zoos, aquariums, natural history museums, and botanical gardens may also be eligible destinations if the primary purpose is for nature education.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, who's next? And we'll stay till 4 p.m. But if there's no more questions from now, we'll end at 3:50. So, keep the questions going. Okay. We got a question from Maria. Is the state reserve considered a state park for this grant purpose? So I'm going to let's go back to the criteria for nature area trips, and let's go to page 23, Nikki. And Nikki, can you copy and paste the sentence right above part A with the link and put that in chat? Thanks. And just respond to Maria. So to qualify for the 2 points for a state park system destination, it just has to be one of the sites that are in the link that we just provided in our chat, and that link is also available in the top of page 23. Thanks, Nikki. Any more questions? Thank you. Okay, unless we get more questions, we will close at 3:50. All right, countdown. 2 more minutes left, unless there's more questions. Thank you. We have a question. Where do I find the recording of this meeting? So Nikki, if you can go back to our OEP website and show the application process section. All right. So on our program website, which again is parks.ca.gov/OEP, click on the application process tab. All right, Nikki showing you, and then scroll down lower and keep going, and you'll see 2 recordings from prior past workshops we did back in August. We're going to add today's webinar as well as tomorrow's on that website as well. It takes us normally a few days just to do a little editing and what have you. So it should probably be posted by maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Since there were any more questions? Okay, great. You're very welcome. Since that was a question, it reset our clock. So, which is great. We're here to help. So we'll stay as long as you have questions. So we'll stay for 2 more minutes in case there's more questions. So 3:55. And if there's more questions, we'll continue. One more minutes.
It looks like Aaron has a question.
Yes, I have another question that was just asked to me in regards to the educational aspect for our tribal members, or basically for our youth and some adults. I was asked if a stipend could be paid to elders that could be kind of like a teacher or an aspect of giving the traditional stories to our youth. upon trips or even for our sites that are here on the reservation. We do have a couple of elders that are volunteers, but I was just asked to see if it would be eligible to kind of give them a stipend for that time period that they might be giving that type of education to our youth, whether it's a traditional story or the site, where we were traditionally living, but not living there now, but in that aspect, if that was eligible.
Yeah, great question. So it's definitely eligible as a, as a stipend, and I also want to, talk about the difference between eligible and scoring points.
Mhm.
So the first part of the answer is yes, it's eligible. Second part is, Nikki, if you could please go to page 26. And to score the points for internships, you want to look at the 8-point option here, which is, I definitely encourage all of you to go for the highest point option possible within your control. So this is definitely another one within your control. It says that at least 3 residents will each, keyword each, receive 200-hour internships, transferable to employment resumes. So for a an older adult, an elder, to qualify for the internship to score points, it would have to be 200 hours for the entire grant's performance period. So yeah, so it's so your goal is for internships, you do want to score these 8 points. So you do want to have a plan for at least 3 residents, whether they're like teenagers, young adults, or elders, to each receive 200 hours of an internship. And then, but if you're going to have additional interns with less hours, that's also eligible.
Okay, thank you. I'll let the group know.
Okay,
You're
you're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great question. Great question. Okay, we're gonna stay for 2 more minutes if there's more questions. All right, 1 more minute and we'll close at 4 p.m. unless there are more questions. Okay, any more questions? Last chance. I mean, of course, you'll have your project officers available to help you all the way through December 14th. So this is not really your last chance. This is your last chance during the webinar. Okay. All right, team, looks like we're done. You can go ahead and stop the recording and close the workshop. Thanks, everyone.